And we are recording, I think.
We are.
Welcome to Sheffield Hopcast. It is the 1st of November. It's All Saints' Day today. And it's also a special weekend for the beer world of Sheffield. We'll get onto that in a moment. First of all, let's do the hellos. Well, hello, I'm James. And I'm going to go to Sean to say hi. Hi, Sean.
Evening, James. How are you? You all right?
Pretty splendid. I can't complain. Quite tired, but I don't like to moan about these things. So we're going with a sours theme. We'll get onto the reasoning behind that a bit later on. And for some reason, we all seem to have gone with two beers tonight. So Sean, what is your beer and backup beer?
Yeah, I don't normally have two beers, but Adam did give me the idea. So my backup beer is a beer I was going to drink tonight. Anyway, it's not a sour or anything like that. It was just the next thing I've got lined up. We've been sent some cans by Howling Hops down in London. It's a Sabro Stout, the second up. So that should be a bit of a coconutty stout. So if you see the colour of my beer change during the show, then I'll have swapped over to beer two. Beer one is a Belgian beer. It's from Hanssens, who are in the little sort of village of Dwarp, Flanders, just south of Brussels. It's a beer called VSOR, bottled in November 2018. VSOR stands for Very Special Old Red. So an old red, aged ale, strawberries, raspberries, cherries, and blackberries. So I'll get on with opening that. And as we perhaps discussed online a little bit earlier, we're going to return back to beer because we'll perhaps give people a chance to taste it.
Indeed. So what is it? Very Special Old Red?
Correct.
Right. Is it actually named after you then? Is that the theory behind
Nick
it?
Hucknall.
Yeah. I can see the potential there. I am old.
Make a
after
good noise
all.
this in it. I'm looking forward to this.
You know what you need? You need your wild beer.
There we go. That was a good noise. That I like that. That was quite subtle. That was good. All
Yes,
right, Adam. You've you were the founder of this double beering that we're doing tonight. So I'm assuming that both your beers will be crackers, and that's why you couldn't choose between them.
Let's hope so. Yeah. I've gone for two Funk Dungeon beers that I could get a hold of this weekend. Obviously, but the Funk Fest has gone virtual this weekend, and there's been a lot of people getting involved in sour beers. My little local shop has and stuff. It had so it got some extra beers in. So I just picked the two they had on, which is the Hopbretta Tradition, 4.9%, and Funkin' Drublick, which is the barrel aged sour lager. So I'm on the Hopbretta one first. Hi, Jim. Jim's arrived. Brewed by Jim, I imagine. These ones. There it is. So yeah. Also, I didn't realize 90s girl bands had days named after them. All Saints Day. Do Spice Girls get one as well?
Is it just called Saints Day? No, it is All Saints Day, isn't it? The day after Halloween. I feel like I might be making this up, but I'm sure it is. I'm going to check that out while I hand over to Laura and Jim, who is... Well, Jim's in the middle of making pie, so may not be with us for too long. I'm glad you could drag yourself away from your pie. I do, however, now feel second best in the beard department, but I'm gaining on you, Jim. I'm doing my best. I'm getting there. So the whole point of why we've gone with this kind of funky sour theme is because it is Funkfest. Now, last year we were all there and had a tremendous time. This year, for obvious reasons, it's had to go virtual. We have talked about it a couple of times over the last couple of months, and it has been this weekend. And is that now it, Laura? Is virtual Funkfest now done and dusted?
So the official kind of virtual events for the weekend are, we've just done the last one, which was a absolutely excellent cider tasting with Ross Cider that Hop Hideout organised. But we've had a couple of beer tastings that we've hosted along with Little Earth Project and London Beer Factory happening over the weekend. So the Funk Fest at Home weekend is, this is kind of the culmination of it. We were also intending to do a Funkfest Fringe and had a variety of venues around the country who were lined up to be pouring some sour and mixed ferm beers, whether that was beers of ours from Abbeydale Brewery or guest beers, and just kind of celebrating the wider world of mixed ferm. So we did have quite a few of those lined up last week and this coming week. With the situation as it's developed, those have largely been postponed, although Walkley Beer Co. have had the launch of one of the London Beer Factory collaborations this weekend. Hop Hideout have got one of the other ones pouring as well, and the Broken Seal tap room down south have been participating as well. But other than that, rather than keep it kind of surrounding the at-home weekend that we had planned, we've just decided to say, you know what, if you want to have a mixed ferm beer on and you want to shout about it, Funkfest Fringe is for life. So hopefully those are going to be still happening and will be taking place when it's safe to do so. But in terms of this weekend, yes, this is the final flourish.
Cool. I'm looking forward to finding out a bit more about how it's gone. But the big question for now, of course, is, well, normally it's what is your beer. Tonight it's what is your beers.
So my first beer is this one. It's a Rose Hip Saison from Yonder. I've selected this because Yonder were instrumental in making Funkfest at Home happen this year. We've done some really limited bottle releases that were only available to people who were taking part in the virtual festival, and Yonder very, very kindly supplied us with some 375ml bottles. So I thought it was a good excuse to crack open this. I bought this arrived with me 2 weeks ago, and was a beer that I bought because when the first lockdown happened, they obviously had a lot of stock that they weren't able to utilize or sell. So they sent some of their mixed ferm beer to a gin distillery, and I bought a bottle of the gin that came out of that. I haven't opened it yet, but it's a wildflower gin distilled from a mixed ferm beer, so I'm really looking forward to trying it. And my backup beer, which I'm partly hoping I don't get onto because it's 6:30 and I've already drank quite a few ciders, is a beer that I've definitely mentioned before, and it is my favourite beer of all time, and it is Verzet Brewery Kamaradsky, which is a blend of a Russian Imperial Stout and a Nude Brune aged in balsamic vinegar barrels. And it's amazing.
We've definitely talked about that before.
So that's what I'm going to move on to after the Rose Hip Saison.
And Jim, I saw you with a beer in hand.
I've gone for a beer what I made. The heavy nettle that was released for last year's Funkfest.
No, it wasn't.
It was brewed around last year's Funkfest. So we made it was 7 days before we had the festival, and we made this beer, and we ended up having the first pour of the fermented in barrel, finished in barrel, served in barrel, of the first wave of British heavy nettle. And then this was released at some point in 6 months or so later. But I've kind of tend to keep some of these cans in the cellar at home just to make sure that they're aging well, and kind of keep an eye on the flavour profiles developing. And still tasting really good at the moment. Was I meant to have a second?
Yeah. Okay,
good stuff. Cool.
Yeah, my second beer is
Yeah. So I've gone double beer as well, just because I don't want to feel left out. Although both mine are relatively sensible and not particularly funky either. So one is an Abbeydale beer, and it is Unbeliever, the tropical Berliner Weiss version. which comes in at a very modest 3.8%. And then my backup beer is from North, and it is the raspberry and pear version of the triple fruited Goza. I have obviously waxed lyrical about the triple fruited Goza series a few times. I've actually not had one for a little while, so looking forward to that. Again, it only comes in at 4.5%, so I think they're both very sensible beers, but I have been up since 3 a.m, so it's probably worthwhile sticking to sensible beer. So I'm happy with those choices. So yeah, so tell us a bit more then about how the weekend has gone, Laura. I know it's obviously been a big old job organising everything, but I've seen loads on social media. It seems like lots of people have got involved. Sounds like it's gone really well.
Yeah, so we kind of centered around tastings of the new beers that we've released, which is a collaboration with Little Earth Project, which is called Through the Sticks, and it's a rosemary and lemon Lichtenhainer, which is not a very oft-seen beer style. It's essentially a smoked sour. It's generally quite low ABV. Ours is 5.1, so maybe a little higher than you would usually see in a Lichtenhainer, but then usually seeing a Lichtenhainer isn't really a thing. So we had that on Friday night with Tom and Danny from Little Earth Project. That beer was actually brewed just over a week before lockdown happened. So it's kind of the last thing that we did with another brewery before we weren't allowed to have friends anymore. So I felt like the timing of releasing it for this festival was quite poignant and quite nice. And then yesterday we had a taste of 3 beers, which were all brewed with London Beer Factory at last year's festival. So I know you guys were there, so you might remember that we did a live brew on the first day of the festival with London Beer Factory, and they brought their mobile cool ship along. So we made a beer that a third of the wort was cool shipped, and then the other 2/3, just due to the size of our brew kit, was split off and fermented in different ways. And all 3 were kind of ready for release. Done a few bottles that were sent out to the people taking part in the festival, but largely they've gone into keg. So hopefully, maybe not this week, but in a month or so, fingers crossed, the beers should be starting to pop up on bars as well. I know London Beer Factory's Barrel Project bar down on Bermondsey have taken a keg of each for people to try. So we did that, but then we've also been encouraging, whatever people were drinking, it's not supposed to just be an Abbeydale Brewery showcase. It's about celebrating mixed fermentation in general. So we've been really, really lucky that plenty of local retailers, including Beer Central, have done something a little bit special and pushed the kind of mixed fermentation side a bit more. So Sean did little pairings of a traditional Belgian style mixed fermentation beer with an up and coming UK sour brewing brewery, which was really exciting. And just kind of asking people to crack something open, give it a try, and chat to us about it over the weekend. Just to try, nothing too fancy, just quite low key, quite informal, but just in the spirit of community and celebration, and basically trying to bring people together a little bit, even though we can't be physically in the same place, was the idea.
In terms of the funk side of Abbeydale, I would imagine that you have to think a lot further into the future as compared with your core sort of products. So perhaps even more a question for Jim. How many funk beers are on the go, either from a planning point of view or from a aging point of view at any one time? Are you already thinking in 12 months' time, this might be ready and that might be ready, or will it just be 6 months? How far do you have to think ahead?
For me, in terms of the stuff that I've got in barrel, I'm kind of thinking where things might be. We taste relatively regularly and see what the barrels are tasting like, and then move forward from there. And so we kind of taste the barrels every 3 months or so, but then that kind of gives us a guide of where they might be. So that is the kind of general plan is where beers are. But
so the beers are dictating the plan rather than the plan dictating the beers.
It's a bit of a mixture, to be honest. We have some. I've got beer in barrel that I filled on Friday. That I know we're kind of planning a vague release for, like the end of the first quarter. So kind of March time next year, and that's the kind of closest, the shortest bit of timescale that we kind of work with on the barrel aged full mix firm things. And so 6 months is the shortest, but I also have beer in barrel that I'm going to be blending at some point next year for the brewery's birthday, the 25th anniversary of the brewery, that will have a blend of a 3-year-old beer plus some beer that we brewed at the start of lockdown. And so there is the kind of planning phase of it being 3 years old, but also some stuff that's currently only 9 months old. But by the time we get to blend it, it's going to be a year old. And so we're going to have these blends of beer, and it might need something else on the barrel stock just to kind of add a little bit of seasoning, a little bit of addition. We don't know that yet because that's still 5 months away. So we can have a mixture of really long-term planning and the kind of planning in terms of, say, the artwork. We're putting balls in motion now to make sure everything's ready, because then the turnaround time can be, I can have beer ready in a few weeks, but that's a beer that's already could be 2 years old. So it's a bit of a mixture. It's like we've got stuff aging in barrel that's just kind of nice conditioning coming up to maturity that we then blend back with some fresher beer or with some older beer to put into some cans with some new artwork. So I kind of go with where the beer tells me, but with some of the beers, but also we might just be brewing something that is, this is one batch of beer, we're making one brew, and it's going to be blended and canned at the same time in about 6 months' time.
Yeah.
And then, so yeah, it's a bit of a mixture.
Do you keep your records of all that? I imagine modern day breweries have to use spreadsheets and online tools. I'm hoping that you've got some sort of dusty, scrolled sort of parchment records that are
leather bound.
Yeah.
It's human leather and it's all up here. It's a bit of a mixture. There's some handwritten notes, and there's notes that I know that anyone else trying to decipher my 1, bad handwriting and 2, bad note taking won't be able to make hide nor hair of it. But I know what's happening with everything, so that's what matters at the moment.
I've got images of you having like a massive whiteboard that's got all this stuff on. Like I've got a whiteboard with goals for the month written on it, and top of it is drink 2 liters of water a day. Like that's the extent of my whiteboard skills. Sorry, Adam.
Oh, sorry. I, before you arrived, Jim, I was saying I was drinking the Hopbretta tradition. Is because this is like part of a series? There's only been 1 or 2 of these before this one. Was the original one part of the series? The original Funk Dungeon beer, was that part of this series?
First canned Funk Dungeon was the Mosaic, the Funk Hopbretta Mosaic. We've done more in keg more than anything else. So we've had probably 5 or 6, and generally they're just, well, we're aiming for single hop bretted, quite hoppy, and have a look at how Brettanomyces and hops work together. But yeah, this is the first in 440. The other one was in the 340.
So is that something that's easier to control in time scales? Is it like a simpler process because you work into like a similar, I don't know, you work into like a similar style thing, or do they still kind of occasionally go a bit wild and go as planned? Or
that series isn't barrel aged. We tend to do them in stainless steel or in other tanks, and they're essentially, we can turn them around in 8 weeks or so once once the fermentation has fully stopped, and we're happy to carbonate it and put into can or into keg. And so they're a quicker turnaround fermentation. But that's kind of the aim. Hops are generally, you want to drink them fresh. And so while we want to control the fermentation with the hops, it's that balance between getting the most out of the Brettanomyces and the most out of the dry hopping. And so we'll combine the two and kind of cut them a little bit short. And yeah.
What's in this one then? What hops in this one?
Tradition is the name.
Oh, Tradition's. Oh, right. I thought that. So is that kind of a native one then?
It's a German hop based on it's a very noble hop. So like one of the original varietals of hops, but very simple, but also has some really interesting characteristics. It's so we use a lot of it in some of our more traditional best bitters and pale ales that will go into traditional Hample cask market, but it's still a good, still an interesting hop. It's not got loads of that floral aroma that people might expect from a hoppy beer in inverted commas, but it's got lots of pine and grass and a nice earthy characteristic that I think works well with the Brettanomyces. So yeah,
good stuff.
Cool. I love the description of a noble hop. I think that's fabulous. This hop is very noble. Laura, what's been the favourite beer that you've had this weekend then, Laura?
Ooh.
Or cider.
You know
Are we
what?
allowing cider?
I don't really know very much about cider, and I've just drank 3 from Ross on Wye, and each one surprised me in a different way, and they were all really delicious. So I've really enjoyed all of those. My favourite was called Raison d'Etre, that was on Sunday brunch this morning, and apparently Jack Whitehall was not a fan, but I was. But I think my favourite beer of the weekend, out of the beers that we've released, I'm probably going to pick the Little Earth Project collab, the Through the Sticks, the Lichtenhainer. It's just really, really refreshing. It sounds like it's going to be a really over the top beer because it's a rosemary and lemon smoked sour beer. It sounds like, there could be an awful lot going on, and there is. Everything is really well balanced. So it's surprisingly easy drinking. So
is that the one that's got kind of like foraged ingredients and stuff in it?
Yeah, so there's rosemary in there from Little Earth Project, brought some with them from their farm. And I think there's also a bit from our garden in it. So I don't know if you're allowed to still call it foraged when it's from your garden. But there's rosemary in there as well as lemons. So
which we didn't forage.
It's not something I normally go for. When I saw it, I was like, I really want that, because I was a big fan of the Sage Advice one that you did. And it's probably nothing like it, but in terms of an ingredient that you'd think shouldn't go anywhere near a beer, and then you're like, oh, that's really good.
Well, in a way to the Sage Advice, which was sage and apricots, this kind of herb and fruit that normally go as part of either gravy or stuff.
Yeah, chicken.
There's things with both of them are things you cook chicken. But this kind of has a similarly savoury vibe, but in a pleasant and balanced way, which I think is what was the target anyway for the beer.
It does sound really, really good. I saw. I must have seen it pop up somewhere during the week, and I thought that just sounds interesting. I feel like I need to try that. So yeah, I was very very impressed.
Deborah is about 5 minutes away from also having that beer, just through the way there. So everybody's on that today, apart from me.
Get her in.
You can invite her on if you wanted to.
No,
a bit shy.
No, that would get me in the back books, I'm afraid. Yeah, she can't compete with Jim's beard. Oh, yours is James, actually.
So I mean, obviously, we've got other stuff that I guess we've got to talk about because it's only been a couple of weeks since we last did Hopcast, but it feels like a lot's happened in that time and a lot's changed, and there's a lot going on in the country and in the world again. So as we talk now on Sunday evening, last night was the announcement from Boris Johnson about a second national lockdown starting on Thursday, although a few things that are a little bit different. I mean, it kind of just feels right to sort of throw it up to everyone, really, just for kind of, thoughts and stuff like that. I know last time, we all kind of talked about our sort of our beer experiences and where we were getting beers from and stuff like that. But at the same time, I think for us, starting to do the show weekly during lockdown was kind of about preserving our own sanity and hopefully saving some other people's sanity as much as anything else. And then since then, it feels like life's got back to some kind of normality, and now we're perhaps heading in a different sort of direction. Sean, I know last time, obviously, for a while, Beer Central kind of closed completely, and then you kind of operated in a more of a mail order delivery sort of sense, and obviously now you've been back open for a bit. Any idea what kind of you're looking at in terms of your model through this, potential 4-week plus lockdown?
Yeah, we closed for the shop closed for 3 months, which made us switch more to local delivery and so on. Since reopening, which I think is about 4 months ago, it's been fantastic, really. So the recent announcement, we of course are dictated to by a larger power, Sheffield Council, who run the Moor Market. And so we don't quite get input, but we don't get a final say on what we do ourselves individually. But from emails exchanged today with market staff and canvassing opinion, it seems that the Moor Market is likely to remain open during this current lockdown as an essential site. Foods, fruit and veg and all the rest of it. And of course, off licenses were retained as essential during the last lockdown. And so talking to other people from other beer shops just in the last 24, 48 hours, it's expected that they will be retained on the essential list again this time. So things are probably not going to change that dramatically compared with what we've had last week, other than I'd expect the market just to notch the safer practices up even more again. We've been doing a great job there anyway, but I think they'll just take that up a notch more in terms of public reassurance and protecting public health.
Of course, and I mean for Sheffield as a whole, I mean it's been a couple of weeks of big change for pubs, because of course we were into tier 3 a couple of weeks back, and that meant that pubs, just as pubs, weren't allowed to happen anymore. They had to start selling meals. We've seen, I guess we've all seen places that have pivoted quite quickly to start, doing food, maybe places that weren't doing food before. And I think the kind of the creativity of some places has been fantastic, and of course now it's all going to sort of change again. One thing that I noticed was that it seems like there's a clause this time that wasn't there last time about they're able to stay open and do take away food but not take away alcohol. And of course, we had Josh on, didn't we, kind of not that long ago, talking about what kept the Kelham Island Tavern going through lockdown was the fact that they did the takeaway beer thing, and by the sounds of it, that's not going to be allowed this time. Now we know that we've got a government that are all for a U-turn, so whether that actually happens or not, I don't know, whether it's some miscommunication or something, but from what I saw on Twitter this morning, it looked very much like that. So that's obviously going to be something for us to keep an eye on, because I think that'll have quite a significant impact on quite a few venues.
There needs to be clarity on that. There is a lot of confusion with that. Again, talking to different people earlier today and seeing different posts. So there does need to be some clarity specifically on that point, or some rationale behind the decision. Just having one line to read, which when you keep rereading it, confuse us. So just having one line with no reasoning or rationale attached to it just again leaves for too many grey areas, too much speculation, and too much uncertainty, too much damage then to people's personal businesses, health, and everything else. So there needs to be clarity quick on that tomorrow, definitely.
I think
Yeah,
I think it's less the clarity. I think the clarity is there. It's just the reasoning, really. I mean, it's written down, no alcohol. But
people are thinking it's almost people are almost sorry, Adam. People are almost thinking it's just been written incorrectly. I've seen that. I've seen that people are saying, well, is that been written correctly? So people are questioning even the line that's in there.
Yeah, I think basically you need to decide alcohol is either essential or not. Because if shops can open and just sell alcohol, then I see no reason why a pub can't sell it out its door, essentially.
Yeah.
I think even legally, like, there's got to be questions there, because an off license is called an off license because the licensee holds a license for people to buy alcohol to take off the premises. That's the point of it. Most bars and pubs, their license will also cover them to sell alcohol to be consumed off the premises. So you look at something like what bar stewards have done in the last couple of weeks, where they've reverted back to effectively operating as kind of like a bottle shop, a takeaway place. It is surely you can't turn around to them and just say now, oh, sorry, you've got to close. But somewhere else, and Sean, I've got to use the example of Beer Central because you're there. That effectively, you've got the same sort of license, haven't you? And it just seems like that would just seem incredibly just unfair. And I'm not even sure legally whether or not there's justification for that. So I think what you say, Sean, is quite right. There needs to be some clarity there. And if that is the case, then, why and what on earth is the logic and the rationale behind that? Because I wasn't aware of any problems last time around from places that were, selling, takeaway alcohol. In fact, there were some great places doing some really good services last time. So I think it's going to be a real shame if they have that kind of pulled from under them.
I have seen a few people who are suggesting that it's potentially trying to stop the venues that were selling, literally a pint of beer that I saw that, glass and take away, and that they don't want people hanging around. And I mean, I don't know very many instances of that at all in Sheffield. All the venues that I saw that were kind of pivoting themselves towards takeaway were very much focused on, don't stand outside on the pavement and drink this, please take it home. But if it's a few venues that we're kind of allowing that sort of gathering mentality to thrive outside their venues, if that's kind of tarnished it for everyone, then that's a real shame. I mean, speaking from purely a pub going consumer perspective, not in any way in a professional capacity, but it just seems to me that yet again it's the pubs that are being penalised, and I just can't, like you say, the rationale just isn't there. I walked past 2/3 further down Abbeydale Road the other day, and I could have cried because you walk past and they've got these absolutely beautiful, calling them a gazebo is a disservice, really, like really nice structures outside that are just, people are still outside but are sheltered. They've got heaters outside. They've put so much investment into making sure that they're complying with absolutely everything that they've been told to do, and then to be told to close is just devastating. Under the tier 3 regulations is one thing, and then obviously they've still been able to do, I don't think they're doing meals, but they've still been able to do the delivery up now, and I just can't see what benefit there is to be gained at all if they're told they can't do that. So hopefully the clarity will come, but
I think you're right, Laura. I think it is the open vessel issue that's probably going to get raised tomorrow. About 3 months ago, I had a picture in a street in London of people outside a bar stroke pub. I don't know which it was, but there were throngs of people outside this place, and I thought instantly, well, somebody's reopened here and are just operating as a pub, and they were operating as a takeout, but in an open vessel. So people were quite literally taking their drink, walking onto the pavement, standing with friends, drinking their beer. Nice sunny day, no different to a normal pub. So I think that activity caught the attention of the authorities. So I think clarification-wise, it could be that tomorrow, that you have to do a takeout in a closed vessel rather than an open vessel, is what I'm guessing, and probably think it's going to happen.
Which is fair, isn't it? Because obviously, you know, that what you've described there is somewhere that's pretty much flaunting the regulations.
They are
in a way that's probably actually within the law as it was then.
Yes,
so that needs looking at. But also, you know, we're in November. Like, people are not going to want to buy drinks and stand on the pavement. It's too cold. Like, clearly it's a bit misguided. And then there's also this thing whereby actually click and collect is allowed. So the idea of the fact that, you know, if you go somewhere, pick it up, and then you go, oh, can I get a bottle of that as well? And they go, no, sorry, you have to order that from your phone and then join the back of the queue again. It's like it's just it's really messy, isn't it? And you know, I feel for there's certain venues that obviously I follow more closely than others. You know, 2/3 Laura, as you mentioned, you know, somewhere that I walk past on my daily walk every other day, and you know, seeing how they've changed again. Mentioned bar stewards earlier. They've swapped and changed I don't know how many times. And then, you know, what John up at Beer House has been doing, where, you know, they've now got an entire outside area that they didn't have before, now serving food, and they're going to be able to do that for about 5 days before they've effectively then got to close again. And it's just such a mess, isn't it? And the only thing that I can kind of feel I have any certainty about this is that there will be places that will not reopen now after this, and that just feels like it's just baked in that, you know, there will be places that just can't deal with it. And similarly, you know, there's going to be breweries that are going to really struggle because they struggled first time around. We've talked before about all the changes in kind of the tax situation and stuff that's going to come in as well, and it just feels like we've got an industry here that's getting just getting a total battering, and actually the stats don't really back it up, because, you know, the was it 3% of infections have been traced back to hospitality venues. It just doesn't make any sense, and it's just wrong. Frankly, it's just wrong.
James, I've got a story here about a brewery that is just about to go into liquidation, which is a real personal story relating to one of us four, actually. And so Deventio Brewery, Laura, are just about to finish. And so I'm going to tuck you a Cleopatra away with your name on it, so you can go all the way back to your first drink on your 18th, because they're finishing, they're liquidating the business and packing it all in.
Yeah, I think it's like businesses now people kind of plodded on in March and did what they could, and now businesses aren't in the same position that they were 7 months ago. You know, they're at the end of their tether. They can't keep going anymore. And like Sean said, the reason he said Deventio there is the very first bottle share that Sean ever did. I took a bottle of Deventio Cleopatra, which is still one of my favourite beers. It's.
What was the reason you brought it, Laura?
Because it was the first beer I can remember drinking legally.
That's still my favourite ever story from a bottle share.
And it was the very first one as well, which is really nice. But I think it's just so difficult, because the thing that a lot of people who, you know, for a lot of the general public, the line is pubs are open, pubs are closed, and what can pubs do? And they can order direct from breweries. It's great people are able to still support that kind of next step back in the supply chain, but then it's the bits that people don't necessarily think about. You know, you can go further back in the supply chain from breweries to like the hop merchants and the maltsters that have got piles and piles of stock that, you know, the hop harvest last year, they've still got all those hops there, and there's people aren't able to brew as much and aren't able to take them, and there's no support for them. And then kind of looking at the other side of things and thinking about, well, who is involved in running a pub? You know, you think the pub's open, the pub's closed, the staff in the pub, but then you've got the cellar technicians, you've got the DJs, you've got the security guards that are on the doors every evening. There's just so much knock-on effect in so many different industries that it isn't really being realised for, you know, and I think, I really think it's kind of testament to how adaptable and how wonderful and accommodating so many pubs have been that the general public don't know about this. You know, they're just kind of doing what they can to get by. And it hasn't really come to light of how much is really affected by this. But yeah, I feel like I'm getting a bit deep and meaningful, but it is important. And yeah, it's
you can pick any industry for that. Actually, we're all involved in beer, but every industry across all aspects has that domino effect. So if you're baking bread, it goes all the way down. If you know what I mean, it goes all the way, doesn't it? So
it does. I think my point with beer is that it feels like the restraints on it's not just beer. It's I mean, I guess it's the alcohol industry, isn't it? It's the nightlife industry, for want of a better phrase, seems out of proportion, and increasingly out of proportion. Like, it's been out of proportion pretty much all the way through, but it now feels like it's like just like a form of bullying, and it just doesn't. I can't fathom it. I just can't figure out whether or not. I know there's people that think there must be some other agenda that's going on here, that, you know, we've got a government that just want to, you know, get rid of that entire industry. And you sort of think, I can understand why people would say that, because it does all feel so out of proportion.
Can I play devil's advocate a little bit?
You look
dangerous.
Like late night radio DJ, Adam, that is going to provoke lots of calls, irate calls.
It's just I'm not 100% convinced that those stats stack up. The ones that are high, obviously like schools and workplaces, they're perfectly traceable, because, you know, that person at school's not there or for whatever reason. From my experience being in pubs and stuff recently, I don't think you can trace that very well at all. For example, if you just take the app, for example, you can scan into that, but people must be very anxious about getting a beep saying, "Oh yeah, you've been contacted." But that app, you can scan it, and you can literally cancel that off straight away. Like, there's no commitment to having anything in, you know, connection to that app. So I think that, like, you know, their traceable numbers are low, but I'm not 100% convinced that it's anywhere close to that real numbers. And, you know, it's the inhibitions of, you know, people drinking, you know, and what happens after that, an actual initial point. You know, they're not just going, I'm having a drink here, then I'm just literally going home on my own. You know, it's just, you know, I think there's much more to it than that. And I think that it probably is higher than 3% in reality. But I just think the other things are a little bit easier to trace, I think, possibly.
I disagree. Yeah. Sorry, James.
A little bit.
I think
I read a caller from Sheffield, Laura on line 1.
Like anything, if you go into supermarkets, there's no accountability there whatsoever. You know, I think I've gone into, in the past 8 weeks, I've gone into 6 different supermarkets, and there's been one security guard who's actually bothered to say, I mean, I had a mask on, but who was checking that people had on. You know, pubs are so much more regulated, and yes, there's nothing to stop an individual from cancelling off a check-in, but
I think it's that kind of chaos theory, kind of like, it's not just that one check-in. It's like, mate, so, you know, they've all had a drink, and then they're going, it's all back to ours, and it's like that kind of, that still links back to that drinking. You know, the other thing is, I don't think that the pubs have being sort of aimed at. It's pub drinkers. It's just that the fall guy is the pub, because that's the cut off. You know, that's that circuit breaker. You know what I mean? But they're not kind of going, "Oh, pubs, you're doing really bad things." It's like, no, it's not. It's those people that are in your pubs, but you can't do anything about them. Once, you know, you can do all you want to kind of, you know, be as above board. And I think, I agree. I think everyone, you know, generally has been brilliant. But it's just that, like, it's just, you know, drinking just does that to people. You lose your inhibitions, don't you? And you kind of.
It's again, like I was saying with the open vessels, it's that tarring venues with the same brush, and you're obviously going to get a number of pubs and bars that encourage that kind of person that is going to go in, have a few drinks, and not really care about what they're doing. But it's the fact that there are so many venues that I'm sure the four of us all like to go in that are completely abiding by the rules, that are asking people to leave if they're getting rowdy. That are really kind of trying so hard to encourage a welcoming environment despite all the hurdles that they're facing. Me and Jim were actually in a pub down in Nantwich in Cheshire called the Birkpaw. It was a couple of months ago now when we went away. We had a really nice meal there, like really nice kind of traditional pub. And there were a couple of men in there who were, for want of a better phrase, beer tickers. And you could tell that they hadn't seen each other in such a long time. And the pub really seemed like their kind of haven. And the only place they wanted to go, and they wanted to try the beers that were there, and they wanted to speak to one single friend, and then they were going to get the train home. And that was that. And I kind of thought, like the pubs have been closed for 4 months. Like these people haven't had anywhere to go in that time. And for me, like, I completely understand what you're saying about, maybe students have been getting the reputation of having the house parties and things like that at the moment. And there will be people who don't care about their collective responsibility. But I think that's kind of pushing aside those people for whom the pub is their society and it is their community. And I think that for me is the bit that is so distressing in all of this, is it's the places that have put so much effort in to keep everyone safe, and the people who are going who just want somewhere to go to do what they enjoy doing, and they're not able to do that.
I wasn't saying it was my view, it's just more give it a bit of balance to the but it is something I do sometimes think there's
I do appreciate
it's a good
that,
argument.
It was.
We've only got a couple of minutes before Sean turns into a pumpkin, so let's review our beers. Let's talk to Adam first. Have you had both of yours?
Yeah, I've just poured the last bit of this one.
Wow,
and this is a
impressive.
Surprising colour for a lager. It's slightly peachy, pinky kind of colour. It's hard to tell really because it's got quite poor light.
Which has been your favourite from the two?
This one actually, and this one is the barrel aged sour lager. It's quite fruity actually. It's nice. It's quite light like the last one. Even though it is 5.2%. But I could imagine me drinking quite a few of these. The original one's quite, like I said, it's quite herbally and sort of grassy and really quite dry and hoppy. It's quite hard to describe that beer. I think I found that with the Mosaic one. It's kind of, I don't really know how to explain the flavors in it. It's quite unique, but this one's quite easier. I find it's quite fruity. It doesn't have fruity on the back, but it is, and it's not overly. I'm not any kind of drink. I'm not mad on kind of like oaky kind of flavors, but I think it's got a very light kind of influence on it, which is nice. It's really good. And I will actually pick another one of these up.
Good stuff. I've not got onto my second beer yet, so I can only rate Unbeliever, which is very nice, very tart, and very fruity. I think they're fair descriptions. Lovely beer, brilliant artwork, as ever. So yeah, really good. Laura.
So the Saison isn't my favourite beer style. And I would apply that to this. I just find them a little bit earthy and a bit drier than what I would normally want to drink. But I have really enjoyed this one. It's quite complex, but still quite easy drinking, which I think for my post cider afternoon is a good thing. I also haven't made it onto my second beer, but again, that's probably for the best at this stage in the day, and I'm sure I will be enjoying it later. So,
I guess the evening is still young.
It is.
Sean.
Poured with little or no head. but the carbonation is beautiful on it. There are 4 fruits in there, but the dominating one for me is raspberry, which I love because raspberry is pretty much my favourite fruit. And it's one of those beers that a real tartness, to use your little description there, James. One of those beers actually that has just sort of grabbed every single last taste bud in my mouth, Cat, and giving it a real supercharge. So it grabbed everyone, tartness all over my mouth. So shall I just go on to explain our first ever little sort of Chef Hopcast giveaway? So we got a dozen of these Hanssens VSOR, and so we've got 11 left. So we thought we'd do a little treat for Sheffield Hopcast listeners to celebrate the fest at home that Abbeydale have put on brilliantly over this weekend. So 11 people, if we get 11 people entering, of course, we'll be able to grab one of these bottles as a little prize, as a little win. So all you have to do is email me, Sean, at beercentral.co.uk. That's Sean, SEAN, at beercentral.co.uk. By next Sunday, that's the 8th of November at midday. And anyone that emails saying, stick me in the hat for one of those beers, will get their name in a hat. And in 2 weeks' time, on the next Hopcast, we'll do a little bit of a live draw out for 11 names. And those 11 people will get a bottle. One little terms and conditions really for it is that the prize would either be a collector only from Beer Central, or freely available to anyone that or takes a mail order box from us. I know we have a lot of listeners across the UK who are current customers of ours. What I'm probably really not able to do is just send out one bottle to someone down in deepest Cornwall. But anyone that takes current box from us, mail order, then great. We can send you one of these down if you get drawn out. But anyone in Sheffield, because we've got lots of local listeners that wants to enter or wants to come down and collect it, then feel free. Anything else, terms and conditions wise, on that?
You didn't mention there if participants in the Hopcast are.
Well, I originally thought that no, that shouldn't be possible, but I don't have any written terms and conditions as yet for our little freebie. So I should have. Well, on a side to change the subject, I have got a bottle of Dr. Tankenstein's barley wine, all labelled up and ready for everyone, including
I've got mine,
Nick and Jay from the last edition as well. And so we've all got a bottle of that at the very least. Have you got it already? From us?
I've heard Debs has had a recount on those bottles. There's only actually 8 bottles. 3 have gone missing.
James, when you came in last week, I might have had the foresight to have your beer ready for you. Scott, I don't know whether that's the case.
Anyone who's a regular customer of Sean will be used to
that is it.
The legendary name label on it, which you can't see because it won't focus in on it. But it's a legendary Beer Central name label on it, and yeah, that is it. So a huge thank you to. I didn't realise until I just looked at it. It's 13%. Oh, that's going to be interesting. Yep. To Dr. Tankenstein, that's going to go down very, very well, but probably not this evening. Right, cool. We just need to do beer selfie. We've not done it yet. So grab your bottles and cans and glasses if anyone's got anything left in it, and grab your smiles. And there we go. We are done. Thank you very much for listening. Obviously, next time we speak to you, we will be back in lockdown of some description. Yeah, in theory, we will be. Yeah, well, yeah, maybe a third or something of the way through. But we're all in this together. It's going to be difficult, but stay strong, and we will be back to keep you company in a couple of weeks' time. So we'll speak to you then.
Good night.
See you later.
Yeah.
Bye.